Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. So far, I'm losing subscribers. I don't know how. It happened before. Whatever. Wu-Tang. Got to represent the old place once in a while. Something good came out of it. If you get anything from my work, an epiphany, a connect the dot moment, a new author to read, a new book to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links will be at the bottom of the video. My favorite, with the really sad, pathetic book, Arthur Schopenhauer, Essays and Aphorisms. This is going to be a little controversial for some, but wants me to read it. On religion, a dialogue. So it's a dialogue between what seems to be two Greek people, Demopheles and Philalethes. And I'm going to butcher them. So I'm going to say Phil and Demo, right? Gangster style. Because I'm not butchering names today because I don't want to get frustrated. Period. End of story. We're in the shadow period of Mercury retrograde. Lots of things are going wrong. Communications are not happening. Like weird shit. Weird shit. And I'm also having hives. So I'm allergic to something. I don't know what it is. Laundry detergent, dryer sheets, something I ate today, which I've been eating consistently. So I don't know what's going on, but I have hives. Weird. And I don't like to take Benadryl because the last time I did, oh boy, I had a lot of internal damage. Either way, Allison problems. I know, first world problems. I'm going to start this beautiful translation out with Demo. Very well. But that applies to you too. You've got to take religion cum grano salis. You've got to see that the needs of ordinary people have to be met in a way they can understand. Religion is the only means of introducing some notion of the high significance of life into the uncultivated heads of the masses, deep sunk as they are in mean pursuits and material drudgery, and making it palpable to them. Man, taken by and large, has by nature no mind for anything but the satisfaction of his physical needs and desires. And when they are satisfied for a little entertainment and recreation, philosophers and founders of religions come into the world to shake him out of his superfaction and to point to the lofty meaning of existence. Philosophers for the few, the emancipated founders of religions for the many, for mankind as a whole, philosophy isn't for everyone. As your friend Plato said, and as you shouldn't forget, religion is metaphysics of the people, which they absolutely must be allowed to keep. And that means you have to show an outward respect for it, since to discredit it is to take away from them. Just as there is folk poetry and in the proverbs, folk wisdom, so there has to be folk metaphysics, for men have an absolute need for an interpretation of life. and it has to be one they are capable of understanding. That is why it is always clothed in allegory, and as far as its practical effect as a guide to behavior, and its effect on moral as a means of consolation and comfort in suffering and death are concerned. It does as much, perhaps, as truth itself would do if we possessed it. Don't worry yourself about the Baroque and apparently paradoxical forms it assumes, for you, with your learning and culture, have no idea how tortuous and roundabout a route is required to take profound truths to the mass of people with their lack of them. The people have no direct access to truth. The various religions are simply schemata by which they grasp it and picture it, but with which it is inseparably linked. Therefore, my dear chap, I hope you forgive me for saying that to ridicule them is to be both narrow-minded and unjust. Phil, OG style. But isn't it just as narrow-minded and unjust to demand that they should exist no other metaphysics except this one cut to the requirements of the people's wants and capabilities? That its teaching and doctrine should mark the limit of inquiry and be the guide and model for all thinking, so that the metaphysics of the few and emancipated, as you will call them, must amount to nothing but a confirmation, fortification, and illumination of your metaphysics of the people, that the highest powers of the human mind should thus lie unused and undeveloped, should indeed be nipped in the bud in case their activities might happen to run counter to your folk metaphysics. And do the pretensions of religion amount to bottom, to anything less than this? Is it proper and becoming in that which is intolerance and pitilessness itself to preach tolerance and pity? I call on heretic. Courts and inquisitions, religious wars and crusades, Socrates, poisoned cup of Brunos and Van Vinnies, blazing pyres to bear witness. And even if, as I grant, that kind of thing doesn't go on nowadays, what could stand more in the way of genuine philosophy of honest inquiry after truth, which is the noblest calling of noblest men, then that convictional metaphysics to which the state has granted a monopoly and whose propositions are hammered into everyone's heads in his childhood so earnestly and so deep and firmly that unless it is of miraculous degree of elasticity, it retains their impress forever, so that his capacity for thinking for himself and for making unprejudiced judgments, a capacity which is in any case far from strong, is one and for all paralyzed and ruined. Demo. What all this really means is that people have acquired a conviction they aren't willing to give up in exchange for yours. Phil. If only it were a conviction and one founded on reason, then it could be combated with reasons and we should be fighting on equal terms. But it is common knowledge that religions don't want conviction on the basis of reasons, but faith on the base of revelation. And the capacity for faith is at its strongest in childhood, which is why religions apply themselves before all else to getting these tender years into their possession. It is in this way, even more than by threats and stories of miracles, that the doctrines of faith strike roots. For if in earliest childhood a man has certain principles and doctrines repeatedly recited to him with abnormal solemnity and with an air of supreme earnestness, such as he has never before beheld, and at the same time the possibility of doubt is never so much as touched on, or it is only in order to describe it as the first step towards eternal perdition. Then the impression produced will be so profound that in almost every case, the man will almost as incapable of doubting this doctrine as of doubting his own existence, so that hardly 1 in 1,000 will then possess the firmness of mind seriously and honestly to ask himself, is this true? The expression spiritus fortis, strong minds applied to those who do still possess it, is more fitting than those who use it now. But for the remainder, however, there is nothing so absurd or revolting that they will not firmly believe in once they have been inoculated with it in this fashion. If, for example, the killing of a heretic or an unbeliever were declared to be an essential condition for salvation, then almost every one of them would be making do. So one of the main objectives of his life, and in death, the memory of the deed would provide consolation and strength, as indeed almost every Spaniard, in fact, used to consider an auto de fe, a most pious and God-pleasing act, to which we have a counterpart in India in the religious fellowship of the thugs, which the English suppressed only quite recently by numerous executions. His members gave proof of their religiousness and of their worship of their goddess Kali by treacherously murdering their friends and traveling companions whenever the occasion offered, and making away with their possessions under the firm illusion that they were doing something praiseworthy and promoting their eternal salvation. The power of religious dogma imprinted in early years is such that they are capable of stifling conscience and finally all pity and humanity. If you want to see with your own eyes from close to what early inoculation with faith can do, look at English. Nature has favored them before all other nations and furnished them with more understanding, mind, judgment, and firmness of character than all the rest. Yet they have been degraded lower than all the rest, indeed, been rendered almost contemptible by their stupid church superstition, which infiltrates all their capabilities like an idée fixe, a downright monomania. The only reason for this is the education in the hands of the clergy, who take care so to imprint all the articles of faith in earliest youth that it produces a kind of partial paralysis of the brain, which then gives rise to the lifelong imbecile bigotry, through which even people otherwise in the highest degree of intellect degrade themselves and make a quite misleading impression on the rest of the world. But when we consider how essential it is to masterly performance of this sort, that the inoculation with faith, geez, my gosh, should take place during the tenderest years, then sending the missionaries will no longer seem to us merely the height of impurity, arrogance, and impertinence. It will also seem absurd when it is not limited to peoples still in the state of childhood, such as Hottentots, Kaffirs, South Sea Islanders, and the like, among whom it has met with the success one would expect, while in India, on the contrary, the Brahmins meet the sermons of missionaries with conceding smiles or a shrug of the shoulders. Among this, people in general, all attempts at conversion have the most comfortable opportunity for it, notwithstanding, meet with utter failure. For as I have said, childhood and not adulthood is the time to sow the seed of faith, especially when by the time adulthood is reached, an earlier seed has already taken root. Acquired conviction, however, to which adult converts pretend is a rule only a mask for some personal interest or other. It is precisely because people feel that this must almost always be the case that a man who changes his religion after reaching years of discretion is everywhere despised by the majority. And this contempt likewise reveals that every regard religion not as a matter of reason, conviction, but one of faith inoculated early in life and before having been subjected to any sort of test. That they are justified in their opinion appears from the fact that it is not merely the blindly believing crowd which remains faithful to the religion of its respective fatherland. The priesthood of every religion, which has studied the sources and grounds and dogmas and controversies of this religion, does so too, so that for a priest to cross over from one religion or a confession to another is the rarest thing in the world. Thus, we see, for example, the Catholic clergy totally convinced of the truth of all the doctrines of its church, and the Protestant clergy likewise convinced of the truth of all the doctrines of its church, and both defending the doctrines of their confession with equal zeal. Yet this conviction depends entirely on the country in which each was born. To the South German priest, the truth of the Catholic dogma is perfectly apparent, but to the North German priest, it is that of Protestant dogma, which is perfectly apparent. If then these convictions and others like them rest on objective grounds, these grounds must be climactic. Such convictions must, like flowers, the one flourishing only here, the other only there. But the convictions of those who are thus locally convinced are taken on trust everywhere. Demo, that does no harm and makes no essential difference, and Protestantism is in fact more suited to the North, Catholicism to the South. Boy, oh boy. Bill, it would seem so, but I have adopted a higher viewpoint, and I keep a more important objective in sight: advancement of the knowledge of truth in the human race. So far as this is concerned, it is a terrible thing that any and everyone, wherever he may be born, should have a certain assertion impressed upon him in earliest youth, together with the assurance that to call them in doubt is to imperil his eternal salvation. I call this a terrible thing because these assertions are largely concerned with what is the basis of all other knowledge we possess, so that a certain point of view is in respect to all knowledge is fixed one for an all, and if these assertions should be untrue, it is a permanently perverse point of view. And since further their consequences and conclusions extend over our entire system of knowledge, the totality of human understanding is falsified through and through by them. All literature provides evidence of this, that of the Middle Ages most strikingly, but that of the 16th and 17th centuries still all too well. In all these ages, we see even minds of the first rank as if lamed by these false premises, and especially is all insight into the true character and activity in nature shut off to them. Throughout the entire Christian era, theism has lain like an incubus on all intellectual, especially philosophical endeavor, and has prevented or stunted all progress. And when anyone has possessed the rare elasticity of mind, which alone can slip free of these fetters, his writings have been burned and sometimes their author with them, as happened to Bruno and Vanini. But how completely paralyzed ordinarily minds are by this early metaphysical conditioning can be seen in its most lurid and lurious aspect, which such a mind ventures to criticize a doctrine different from the one he himself holds. All you find him concerned to do, as a rule, is to demonstrate that its dogmas differ from those of his own. With that he believes in all simplicity, he has proved the falsity of the other doctrine. It really never enters his head to pose the question, which of the two might be true. His own articles of faith are to him certain a priori. Demo. So that is your highest viewpoint. I assure you, there is a yet higher one. The saying premium vivere de endri philosophore. The first live, then philosophize. Because I'm butcher Latin. Has a more comprehensive meaning than may at first sight appear. What matters before all else is to restrain the rude and evil dispositions of the mass of the people, and so prevent them from perpetrating acts of violence, cruelty, and infamy in the more extreme forms of injustice. And if you are delayed doing that until they had come to recognize and understand truth, you would infallibly have to wait forever. For even supposing truth had already been discovered, they would be incapable of grasping it. They would still need to have it clothed in allegory, parable, myth. As Kant has said, there must always be a public standard of right and virtue, and this standard must indeed always be fluttering high in the breeze. In the last resort, it is a matter of indifference, which parallatic figure stands upon it, provided only it correctly indicates what it meant. Such an allegorical representation of truth is for mankind as a whole, everywhere and always, an answerable substitute for the truth itself, which is forever inaccessible to it, and for philosophy in general, which it will never comprehend, quite apart from the fact that this changes every day and has never yet assumed a form which has won universal recognition. So you see, my dear Philalethes, Phil, practical aims take precedence over theoretical ones in every respect. Phil. This whole point of view is misguided as it is nowadays, universally praised and popular, which is why I now hasten to enter a protest against it. It is untrue that state law and justice can be maintained only with the assistance of religion and its articles, and the judiciary and the police require it as their necessary complacement for preserving public order. It is untrue, though it was reiterated 100 times. For the ancients, and especially the Greeks, provide us with a factual and striking instantia in contrarium. They possess nothing whatever of what we understand by religion. They had no sacred scriptures. They had no dogmas which were taught, adherence to which was demanded of everybody, and that which were imprinted on the minds of children. Nor did the administrators of their religion preach morals or worry about what people were doing or not doing. Absolutely not. The duties of the priests extended no further than temple ceremonial, prayers, hymns, sacrifices, processions, lustrations, and so forth, all of which has nothing to do with the moral improvement of the individual. The whole of so-called religion consists rather in seeing that this or that God was provided with a temple in which his cult was carried on under the offices of the state, which cult was therefore a bottom police matter. No man apart from the functionaries involved was in any way obliged to attend these ceremonies or even to believe in the cult. No trace of a duty to believe in any dogma, whatever is to be discovered in the whole of antiquity. Only if a man publicly denied the existence of gods or otherwise disparaged them, did he render himself liable to punishment, for then he affronted the state which served them. But apart from this, everyone was free to decide for himself how much he believed. Of the immorality of the soul and a life after death, the ancients, far from having a dogmatically fixed conception, had no firm or clear conception at all. Their ideas on these subjects were altogether loose, vacillating, indefinite, and problematic, and each had his own and their ideas about their gods. were equally various, individual, and vague. Thus, the ancients really had no religion in our sense of the word. But did anarchy and lawlessness reign among them because they had no religion? Did they not rather produce law and civic order to such purpose that it still remains as the basis of our own? Was property not completely secure, even though it consisted in a large degree of slaves? And did the state of things not endure for well over 1,000 years? So I cannot acknowledge that religion has a practical objective, nor that it is indispensably necessary as the basis of a civil order. For if such were the case, then the sacred endeavor to obtain to light and truth would appear at the least quixotic, and if it should venture to denounce the official faith as an usurper, would have taken over the throne of truth and maintained its seat by perpetual deception, it would appear criminal. Demo. But religion is not antithetical to truth, for it itself teaches truth, only because its field of action is not a narrow lecture room, but the whole world and mankind. It has to adapt itself to the needs and abilities of a large and assorted public, and cannot present the truth naked. Religion is truth expressed in allegory and myth, and thus made accessible and digestible to mankind at large. For mankind at large could never endure it pure and unalloyed, just as we cannot live on pure oxygen. The profound meaning and lofty goal of life can be revealed to the people and kept before their eyes only in symbolical form, because the people are not capable of grasping it literally. Philosophy, on the other hand, should be like the Ecclesian mysteries, be reserved for the few and select. Phil, I understand. What it comes down to is that truth is to be clothed in lies. That's David right there. But that is an alliance which will ruin it. For what a dangerous weapon you place in a man's hands when you grant him the right to employ untruth as a vehicle for truth. Pause. We're living that right now. Everything has been inversed, reversed, inversed, reflected, bad. And this is just showing you this conversation. If that is allowed, then I fear untruth will do more harm than the truth it carries will ever do good. If allegory would confess itself to be such, then indeed I might not object. Only if it did that, it would forfeit all respect and consequently all effectiveness. It therefore has to put itself forward as true sinew priori, whereas it is at most true sinew allegorico. Here lies the incurable harm, the enduring evil, which has always brought religion into conflict with the noble, unprejudiced endeavor to obtain to pure truth, and which will always do so. Demo. Not at all. That too has been guarded against. For though religion may not openly confess its allegorical nature, it nonetheless gives sufficient indication of it. Phil, how does it do that? Demo, through its mysteries. Mystery is even at bottom the theological terminus technicus for religious allegory. All religions, moreover, have their mysteries. Properly speaking, a mystery is an obviously absurd dogma, which nonetheless conceals a lofty truth in itself completely incomprehensible to the common understanding of the uncultivated masses of the people, who then absorb this truth, then discuss and take it on trust without being misled by the absurdity, which is obvious to them too. Thus, they participate in the kernel of the matter insofar as it is possible for them to do so. You will understand better that I mean when I say the mysteries employed in philosophy too, as when, for example, Pascal who was pious, mathematician, and philosopher in one, says in the threefold capacity, God is everywhere center and nowhere periphery. Maleblanc, too, has rightly said, La liberté est un mystère. One can go further and assert that everything in religions is really mystery, for to impart truth sensu horari to the people in its uncultivated state is absolutely impossible. All that is capable of is enlightenment through an allegorical reflection of it. Naked truth does not belong before the eyes of the profane vulgar and must appear before the heavily veiled. Hence, it is quite unreasonable to require a religion that it shall be true sensu priori. Myth and allegory are its proper element, but under the unavoidable condition imposed by the mental limitations of great multitude, it offers sufficient satisfaction to the ineradicable metaphysical need of man and takes the place of pure philosophical truth, which is indefinitely different and difficult to obtain and perhaps never will be obtained. Bill. Oh yes, more or less, as a wooden leg takes the place of a natural one, it substitutes for it, does duty for it as best it can, claims to be regarded as a natural leg. It's artificially put together well or less well, and so on. The only difference is that while a natural leg, as a rule, preceded the wooden one, religion has everywhere got the start on philosophy. Demo. That may be, but if you haven't got a natural wooden leg, one is very useful. You must bear in mind that the metaphysical need of a man absolutely demands satisfaction because the horizon of his thoughts must be closed and not remain unbounded. But man has a rule, no capacity for weighing reasons and then deciding between true and false. Moreover, the labor which nature and its needs impose upon him leaves him no time for such inquiries, nor for the education that presuppose. In this case, therefore, there can be no question of conviction by reasons. He must be referred to belief in authority. Even if a really true philosophy had taken the place of religion, 9/10 of mankind at the very least would receive it on authority, so that it too would be a matter of belief. Authority, however, can be established only by time and circumstance. It cannot be bestowed upon that which has only reason in its favor. It must be allowed to that which has acquired it during the course of history, even if it is only an allegory representation of truth. This representation, supported by authority, appeals, first of all, to the actual metaphysical disposition of man, to the theoretical need which arises from the impurtane enigma of our existence, from the consciousness that's behind the world's physical plane. There must be concealed the metaphysical, something unchanged, which serves as a basis for the world's continual change. Then, however, it appeals to the will, to the fears and hopes of mortals living in constant distress, for whom it accordingly creates gods and demons on whom they can call, whom they can appease, whom they can win over. Finally, it appeals to the moral consciousness undeniably present in man, to which it lends external stay and confirmation, a support without which would not easily be able to maintain itself in the struggle with so many temptations. It is precisely from this side that religion affords an inexhaustible source of consolation and comfort in the countless and great sufferings of life, which does not desert men even in the hour of death, but rather only then reveals its full efficiency. Religion may thus be compared to one who takes a blind man by the hand and leads him, since he cannot see for himself, and the sole point is that he should arrive at his destination, that should he see all there is to see. This is ridiculous. Phil. This last aspect is certainly the strong point of religion. It is a phos. It is a pure phos. Pious fraud simply is the seal of truth. That is undeniable. But this makes a priest into a curious cross between a deceiver and a moralist. For they durst not teach the real truth, as you have quite rightly explained, even if they knew it, which they do not. So that a true philosophy is possible, but not a true religion. I mean, true in the proper meaning of the word, and not merely metaphorically or allegorically true in the way you have described. In that sense, all religions would be true, only in differing degrees. In any event, it is quite in keeping with the inextractable tangible of weal and woe, honesty and deceit, goodness and badness, nobility and baseness, which the world as a rule presents us with, that the weightlessness, loftiest, and most sacred truth can make its appearance only when adulterated with a lie, has indeed to borrow strength from a lie as from something which makes a stronger impression on mankind and must be ushered in by a lie in the form of revelation. One could even regard this fact as the distinguishing mark of the moral world. However, let us not abandon the hope that mankind will one day reach the point of maturity and education at which it is capable of, on the one hand, producing, and on the other hand, receiving true philosophy. Simplex signorum veri. Simplicity is the seal of truth. Naked truth must be so simple and intangible that it can be imparted to everyone in a true shape without adulterating it with myths and fables, a mass of lies, that is, without disguising it as religion. Demo, you have an inadequate idea of how limited the capacity of most people is. And we're seeing that in today's society. Phil, it was merely a hope I was expressing, but it is a hope which I cannot give up. If it were fulfilled, it would, of course, drive religion from the place which it has so long occupied in its stead, but by the very means kept open for it. Religion would have fulfilled its task and run its course. It could then release the race it has conducted to its majority and itself pass peacefully away. This would be the euthanasia of religion, but as long as it lives, it has two faces. One, the face of truth, the other, the face of deception. You will love it or detest it according to whether you keep one or the other face in view. You have to regard it as necessary evil. It's necessary deriving from the wretch imbecility of the majority of mankind, which is incapable of understanding truth, and therefore it is pressing case requires a substitute for it. Demo, hold to that conclusion then, and bear always in mind that religion has two sides. If it cannot be justified from the theoretical, that is to say, intellectual side, from the moral side, it proves to be the sole means of guiding, controlling, and appeasing this race of animals, endowed with reason, whose kinship with the ape does not exclude kinship with the tiger. If you consider religion in this light and remember that its aims are above all practical and only secondarily theoretical, it will appear to you as worthy of the highest respect. Phil, which respect would rest ultimately on the principle that the end sanctifies the means. I have no inclination for a compromise founded on the basis. Religion may be an excellent means of taming and training the perverse, obtuse, and wicked biped race. But in the eyes of the friend of truth, every fraud, however pious, still a fraud. A pack of lies would be a strange means of inducing virtue. The flag to which I have sworn allegiance is truth. I would say that too. I shall stay faithful to it everywhere, and regardless of the outcome, fight for the light and truth. If I see the religions in the ranks of the enemy, Demo, but you wouldn't find them there. Religion is no deception. It is true and is most important of all truths. But because, as I have already said, its doctrines are so often lofty, of kind that the multitude could not grasp them directly, because I say its light would blind the common eye. It appears veiled in allegory and teaches that which, while not strictly true in itself, is true in respect of the lofty meaning contained within it, and thus understood religion is truth. Phil, that would be fair enough if it could only venture to present itself as true in a mere allegorical sense, but it comes forward claiming to be true in the strict and proper sense of the word. Therein lies the deception, and here is the point at which the friend of truth must oppose it. Demo, but this is a condito sine qua non, indispensable condition. If religion were to admit that it was only the allegorical meaning of its doctrine, which was true, this would rob it of efficiency. Through such righteousness, its incalculability, beneficial influence on the heart and morality of men would be lost. You ought to regard against letting your theoretical cavilling discredit in the eyes of the people, and finally wrest from them something which is an inexhaustible source of consolation and comfort, and which they need so much. Indeed, with their hard lot, need more than we do. For the reason alone, it ought to be inviolable. Phil, with that argument, you could have driven Luther from the field when he attacked the sale of indulgences. Truth, my friend, truth alone holds firm, endures and stays steadfast. Truth's consolation is only solid consolation. It is indestructible diamond. Demo, yes, if you had truth in your pocket, you can favor us with it on demand, but all you have is metaphysical systems about which nothing is certain but the head conjuring they cost. Before you deprive someone of something, you must have something better to put in its place. Phil, oh, to have to go on hearing that said. To free a man from an error is not to deprive him of anything, but to give him something. For the knowledge that a something is false is a piece of truth. No error is harmless. Sooner or later it will bring misfortune to him who harbors it. Therefore deceive no one, but rather confess ignorance of what you do not know, and leave each man to devise his own articles of faith for himself. Demo, particularism of the sort is totally opposed to human nature and would consequently be the end of all societal order. Man is an animal metaphysicum. That is, a metaphysical need is more urgent than any other. He thus conceives life above all according to the metaphysical meaning and wants to see everything in the light of that. Consequently, and however strange it may sound in view of the uncertainty of all dogma, agreement on fundamental metaphysical views in the chief thing for man, because genuine and lasting social union is possible only among those who do agree on these. The social structure, the state, will stand quite firm only when it is founded on a universally recognized metaphysical system. Such a system can naturally be only one of folk metaphysics, that is, religion, which is then fused with the state constitution and with every social manifestation of the people's life, as it also every solemn act of private life. The social structure could hardly exist at all if religion did not lend weight to the government's authority and ruler's dignity. Phil, Oh yes, princes use the Lord of God as a boogie to get their grown-up children to bed when nothing else will any longer serve, which is why they value him so highly. Very well, but I could advise every ruler to sit down every half year on a certain fixed date and carefully read the 15th chapter of the first book of Samuel. So, as always, to have in mind what it means to use the altar to support the throne. Moreover, since the ultima ratio theologum, the state has gone out of its effectiveness of this means of government has much diminished. For as you know, religions are like glowworms. They need darkness in order to shine. A certain degree of general ignorance is the condition for the existence of any religion, the element in which alone it is able to live. Perhaps the day so often prophesied will soon come when religions will depart from European man like a nurse, whose care the child has outgrown, and which henceforth comes under the instruction of a tutor. For articles of faith based on nothing but authority, miracles, and revelation are beyond doubt short-term aids appropriate only to the childhood of mankind. And it must be admitted that a race which, according to all indications provided by physical and historical data, is at present no older than 100 times the life of a man of 60, is still in its first childhood. Demo. Oh, if instead of prophesying, which unconcealed the light, the end of Christianity, you would only consider how indefinitely great a debt European man owes it. He received from Christianity an outlook previously unfamiliar to him, an outlook deriving from knowledge of the fundamental truth that life cannot be an end in itself, but the true end of our existence lies beyond it, life. For the Greek and Romans had placed it entirely within life, in which respect, at any rate, they had cold, blind heathen. All their virtues, consequently, can be traced back to the qualities serviceable to the community, to useful qualities, and Aristotle says naively, those virtues must necessarily be greatest, which are the most useful to others. Christianity liberated European man from the exclusive involvement in an ephemeral and uncertain existence. The Greeks and Romans have forgotten the serious, true, and profound significance of life. They lived heedlessly, like grown-up children, until Christianity came and called them back to the life earnestness. Phil. And to judge how it succeeded, we have only to compare antiquity with the Middle Ages, which followed it. The age of Perseus, say, with the 14th century, you would hardly think we were dealing with the same species. In the former, the fairest unfolding of humanity, a splendid state structure, wise law, a carefully balanced legal administration, rationally regulated freedom, all the arts, together with poetry and philosophy, at their peak, creating works which, after thousands of years, still stand as unequaled models of their kind, almost as the productions of higher beings, whom we can never hope to emulate. And at the same time, life beautified by the noblest societal fellowship, such as we see reflected in the symposium of Xenophon. And now look at the latter age, if you are able to see. Look at the age when sorry guys, the church had fettered the minds and forced the bodies of mankind so that knights and priests may lay at the drudgery of life on their common beasts of burden, the third estate. Here you find force majeure, feudalism, and fanaticism in intimate alliance, in their trained hideous ignorance and darkness of mind, and in consequence intolerance, quarreling over beliefs, religions, wars, crusades, persecutions of heretics and inquisitions, while social fellowship took the form of nightly chivalry, compounded by brutality and foppishness, with grotesqueries and humbug, predominantly reduced to a system with degrading superstition and apish veneration of women. The ancients were unquestionably less cruel than the Middle Ages, and they were moreover very tolerant, laid great stress on justice, frequently sacrificed themselves for their country, and displayed such nobility of every kind, and so genuine a humanity that is to this very day an acquaintanceship with their thoughts and actions, and is called a study of humanities. The tolerance of pedestry, which is certainly reprehensible, and the principal reproach now made against the morality of ancients, is a trifling thing compared with the Christian abominations I have mentioned, and that this practice is less evident now by no means implies that it is that much less prevalent. All things considered, can you maintain that mankind has really been made morally better by Christianity? Demo, if the results have not everywhere corresponded to the purity of truth of the doctrine, it may be because this doctrine has been too noble, too exalted for mankind, and its goal has therefore been placed too high. It was certainly easier to comply with heathen morality as it is with Mohammedan. What is most exalted is always most open to abuse and imposture, so that these lofty doctrines too sometimes serve as a pretext for the most atrocious proceedings and acts of wickedness. Bill, it would really be an extremely useful inquiry to try to make a completely impartial and accurate assessment of the advantages derived from religion compared with the disadvantages which have attended it. But that would require a much greater quantity of historical and psychological data than we two have at our command. Academics could make it subject of prize essay. Demo, they will take care not to do so. Phil, I am surprised you should say that, for it is a bad sign for religion. If only a statistician could tell us, first of all, how many crimes are refrained from each year from religious motives, and how many from other motives, there would be very few of former. For when a man feels tempted to commit a crime, then you can depend on it. The first thing he thinks of in opposition to the idea is the punishment appointed for it, and the probability of its falling upon him. The second consideration is the risk to his honor. On these two objections, he will, if I am not mistaken, ponder for hours before religious considerations so much as occur to him. If, however, he gets over these two first bulwarks against crime, I believe that religion alone will very rarely hold him back. Demo, but I believe but I believe it will so very often, especially when its influence is already operative through the medium of custom, so that a man immediately shrinks from committing any great act of wickedness. Early impressions are enduring. Phil, suppose a public proclamation were suddenly made at this moment, repelling all laws related to crime. I fancy neither you nor I would have the courage even to go home alone under the protection of religious motives. If, on the other hand, all religions were in the same way declared untrue, we should go on living as before under the protection of law, alone, without any special precautions. But I will go further and say that religions have very frequently had a decidedly harmful influence on morality. It may be asserted as a generalization that what is given to God is taken from men, inasmuch as it is very easy to substitute adulteration of the former from decent behavior towards the latter. In every religion, faith, temple, ceremonies, and rites of all kinds soon come to the pronounce of more immediate interest to the divine will than moral actions. Indeed, the former, especially when they are bound up with the emulations of priests, gradually come to be regarded as a substitute for the latter. Animal sacrifices, or the saying of masses, or the founding of chapels, or the erection of wayside crosses, soon come to be most meritorious works. so that they can atone for even the gravest crimes, as do penance, subjugation to priestly authority, confessions, pilgrimages, donations to the temples and their priests, the building of monasteries, and the like, whereby the priests finally appear to be as virtually no more than go-between in a trade with the bribable gods. And even if it doesn't go as far as that, where is the religion whose adherents do not consider at any rate prayers, hymns, and various acts of devotion as at least a partial substitution for moral conduct? But to return to the main point, you are certainly right to urge the strong metaphysical need of mankind, where religion appears to me not so much the satisfaction as the abuse of its needs. We have seen that at any rate, as regards to the advancement of morality, is utility is the great part problematic, while its disadvantages, and especially the atrocities which have followed in the train, are patently obvious. The matter bears another complexion, to be sure, if we consider the utility of religion as a prop for thrones, for where there are held by the grace of God altar, the thrones stand in the closest association. Every wise prince who loves his throne and his family will consequently always set himself up before his peoples as a model of true religiousness. Demo, well, after all the trouble I have taken, I am sorry not to have altered your attitude towards religion. On the other hand, I assure you that nothing you have adduced has succeeded in shaking my conviction of its high value and necessity. Phil, I believe you, for as it says in Hubris, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. But I console myself with the thought that with controversies and mineral baths alike, the only real effect is the after effect. Demo, then let me wish you a pleasant after effect. Phil, you must have your wish, if only my stomach could digest a certain Spanish proverb. Demo, which is, Phil, detrás de la cruz está el diablo. Demo, which is in English, Phil, behind the cross stands the devil. Demo, come, don't let us part with sarcasms. Let us see rather than, like Janus, or better, like Yama, the Brahmin god of death, religion has two faces, one very friendly, one very gloomy. You have had your eyes fixed on one face. I have had mine fixed on the other. Phil, you are right, old man. I'm sorry, guys. I'm having an allergic reaction, so. Aw, Ethan's scared. That right there. Yeah. In what we are facing today in the world, no one religion is right. No one religion is absolute wrong. But there's a lot of falsehoods, there's a lot of lying, there's a lot of allegory, there's a lot of things in within things that people misread, misinterpret, and are preached to in the wrong context and ways. If we take what any one of the books, they're always claimed they're by God. Which God, may I ask, did they channel? Because if you're not channeling of your most highest self and of God's source, of the all the infinite intelligence, the monad, the pleroma, the energy that's up there that is positive and negative, but of the light, that some things were infiltrated. I'm sorry, and it's the truth. You can't take what was written in a book that had scribes writing them, because not all the people that were apostles and not mages and rabbis were of literacy and could write. So things were interpreted by telephone. If we know that game very well, certain things came out proper and other things did not. All by God design, by the way, because in the age of enlightenment have shown there's much more than a book. You got to go within. The truth is within you, in your own soul, in your being and essence. I don't need any allegories, quotes. I get everything from upstairs, channeled into me. I didn't grow up in a religion. My birth parents and adoptive parents never, well, I was ripped away from my mother when I was born, but my adoptive parents never forced religion on me. And I only learned about religion from my friends because I used to go to church with them. Shaolin, Italian, Irish. That was my whole neighborhood growing up. And that's all I did was go to church with my friends. But it never appeased me. When my cousins and family had bat and bar mitzvahs, I didn't like it. It wasn't me. I had a sweet 16. My parents were upset. But guess what? They respected my choice. That doesn't mean I'm any less of a person of God, serving God, of the All High, not of the demiurgus of Satan, which a lot of people are confusing. When you say God, which one? This whole back and forth dialogue is so important to be put out there. This man, even if he is an existentialist, it doesn't matter. I think they have a very broad range of perspective on metaphysics and seeing the world in an objective type of way that makes sense. Friedrich Nietzsche is not everybody's cup of tea, but he has a lot of good nuggets in his work, and so does Kant and Hegel, Schopenhauer. There's a whole lot more that I've studied. Not everything that they say, I think, holds weight, but in their time of enlightenment, in their era, in their time, their perception was a little different, and things were different back then. We can take what they're saying here and apply it into our now society, and we can see that things are not functioning properly, that things are run by religion, which it shouldn't, and that people are judgmental and feel like they're the chosen ones. No one's fucking chosen. We're all chosen because we're all one. When you come to the understanding that we're all one and playing a role that we got ourselves assigned to in this plane of existence, in this reality dimension, you'll understand how to love and appreciate life and others for the content of their character and the deeds that they do on an everyday. That's all that matters. Not what someone does on Sunday. or what somebody sacrifices on Friday, Saturday, or what someone does 5 times a day. You can have that faith. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You can continue doing those things if that's what makes you happy. But understand the other perspectives that are happening around in the world, because you need to hear them and be open-minded towards it. I read everything because there is truth in a lot of it, amongst a lot of lies. And it's up to you to discern what those lies and truths are for yourself. Go within. A lot of people still have not figured out how to do that. They're hard. And here. When they meet, and they meet, all your chakras meet. It's endless, boundless, beautiful, glorious universe. It's all within you. The micro and the micro and the macro. Yes, I have cute little kitties. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I sure damn did. One of my favorite philosophers of all time. I don't know why, but he saved me so many instances of just rationally thinking. It's great. Sending each and every one of you love and light. Please, 'tis this season to be open-minded, to be more accepting, to have love and compassion and unconditional love for others. You don't know someone's intentions if you're not reading them right. We're all on a mission for God. There's no religion included in that. It's been the downfall of humankind since its invention. Necessary though, because it's soul growth and learning. Amish mindset, please do something for somebody on an everyday basis that requires no effort on your end. A like, a share, a subscribe, and not just for my channel, for anybody that you come across and you like their work. Support them. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. Help other people. That little nugget of nothing is something to somebody. And it's very important that we continue to do that. If you have extra food, if you're having a huge Christmas dinner and you know that somebody's alone, maybe invite them over. If they say no, you at least attempted to do the right thing. It doesn't matter if they don't celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever, Kwanzaa or whatever else goes on. The idea is being human, including people that are alone. So Amish mindset, guys, it's all about us coming together and fixing humanity. And with that, I hope to see you on the next one. Bye, guys.